Hello, everybody. I hope you have been having a good morning so far and that you have been managing well with the first couple of days of working from home and remote school. I know you have because I've been checking in on Seesaw. I even had to get Rosco here to help me out with looking at the Seesaw because there's been so much on this, I haven't been able to look at it by myself. Isn't that right? So Roscoe has been my helper. He's been compiling lists of excellent people for me. So I just like to start off by telling you a little bit about what I've seen. Now, a lot of the people I'm going to mention have actually posted in lots and lots of different subjects, but if I told you everything they've been doing, we'd be here all day. So I'm just going to pick out some of my highlights. So I have been seeing some great work on Seesaw in maths. I was hoping you would do the song or maybe a story or something to help you learn your tables. And I saw a great one from Riley, sent to me all the way from South Africa. And I also had a great song through from Alva and one from Seamus as well. I really enjoyed doing those. I've also just had lots of really good maths work from the textbook and from like worksheets being sent to me by Arian, Nusrat, Ruby, Orla. One thing I think I mentioned to a few of you was consistency, which is that idea of, put the same amount of effort into question number 10 as you do into question number 1. And those people I just mentioned there, they've absolutely been doing that. I also had a post from Orla that said victory, so I wonder, does that mean did she do very well on one of the maths games? Great maths work there, guys. In terms of the history, that's something that I'm very interested in. So I saw some great work through on history from Zoe, lovely stuff from Juliana and from Anthony, and hugely detailed facts coming through from Haley as well. And I just thought, guys, it was very interesting that you had to do a list of facts, but a lot of you kind of chose to focus on a certain area. So for some of you, your facts were related to this idea that the famine impacted or affected people who were poor really much more than everybody else. Some of you focused on the coffin ships. And those are really important areas to look at, especially that idea of people who were poor being affected worse. I remember a long time ago, I used to live in England, and I met someone there who went to school in England, so they wouldn't know as much about Irish history as we would. And that person said to me, Niall, if all the potatoes died, why didn't they just eat something else? Which kind of does sound like a fairly obvious question. And it was that idea that that person couldn't understand that there was nothing else, and that for those people, they were so poor, potatoes were all they had. So I just found it very interesting. I think Roscoe's going to leave us in a minute. I just found it very interesting that some of you focused on that, and that was really cool. My other favourite area is Gaelga, and very, very early post in, very early on Monday, from Christian and Matthias, doing a really good job with their Gaelga. I've also seen great work in Gaelga from Hannah and Fia as well. So well done, guys. Really glad to see that. Very obvious to me that you, and not just the people I mentioned here, but everybody who's been doing their Gaelga so far this week, it's very obvious to me that you guys really looked at the videos because you were getting nearly everything right. That's really important today, because today we're moving on to on Dara Rainu, which, remember those 2-syllable verbs in Irish? So that means there's a different video for today, and you will need to check that because there's different rules. But so far so good, that's been great. I've had really interesting story planners and kind of first chapters of stories coming in on Seesaw, as well as a lot of people just doing very good work on their English reading for this week. So Ollie, I was very impressed with both of those, especially the idea of food escaping from McDonald's and going on the run. I thought that was really interesting. Really interested to see what Elijah's story is going to be like. Aya, you have been doing some great work on your English reading and focusing on those questions there. I really like to see that real careful work as well. James, again, somebody very early on Monday posting me a story plan, so I'm really interested to see how that one turns out. The story plans are really cool for me because I get to guess what it's all going to be about. You just give me a few clues and I guess, and maybe I'll be right and maybe I'll be wrong. Coles too, lots of rhyming character names, which I thought, does that mean it's a comedy? I don't know. And also great work in from Elias there on the English reader too. Really good stuff. Now you had a few other things that you could pick from as well as just English, Irish, maths. So I saw some great evidence of long jumps from Ruby and Anthony and Riley. Well done, guys. Some of those distances were very impressive. And the one I'm very much looking forward to later on this week are the dioramas. So Elias has already done a diorama and sent me a photo of that, and I thought lots of skill went into it, lots of paying attention to making a good construction. So I'm really interested to see what the rest of you come up with. So now what I want to talk to you about is a little project I have planned for next week. And the reason I'm talking to you about it now is it's kind of going to involve a bit of forward planning. So we need to do a bit of planning now for next week. Like all of the tasks that you're being set on remote learning, it's up to you and your parents if you do this. Your parents might decide, well, you know what, you have a lot of work on. Some of you I know go to different language schools, so you might have work from them, and I know a lot of you do music lessons. So, you know, that's why I said in my very first video at the start, it's about you and your parents deciding what's right for you. You might not do every task we give. So this one, you don't have to do it. But if you want to do it, next week we are going to make a collaborative story. So you remember us doing collaborative books using Book Creator. We did one on Islam, and we did one with all our Sinterklaas poems in it. So you know how that works. If I send you the code, you're going to know how to go into that page and put text on it. But this is going to be a bit more complicated because it's a collaborative story. So that means instead of us all writing at the same time, somebody, one of you, is going to have to start the story. And you're going to have to write on page 1 of the story, and when you get to the end of page 1, you have to stop. And it doesn't matter if you're in the middle of the sentence, you stop right there, okay? Even if you're right in the middle of your sentence, you stop. Because the challenge is for the next person to come along on page 2 and finish your sentence and then continue on the story. It's kind of like a writing version of the space jump that we do in school. So that's what we're going to do. Person 1 is going to write a story. They're going to stop dead at the end of page 1, and person 2 is going to have to continue, and then we'll continue and continue and continue until everybody who's taking part in the story has written their piece. So we need to do a bit of planning for that, because first of all, we can't all be writing at the same time, because if you're writing page 5, you need to read what was written on page 4, don't you? And if the person who's supposed to be writing page 4 hasn't done it yet, well, you won't be able to do your job. So there's a few ways around that. First thing, as soon as you have stopped watching this video, right underneath this video in Seesaw, there is a link. And you're going to click on that link and you are going to vote. So the first thing you're going to vote on is what type of story. So is it fantasy? Is it science fiction? Is it romance? Is it historical fiction? Is it horror? You're going to need to vote on that. And whichever one gets the most votes, that's the story we're going to do. The second one you're going to vote on is how many main characters are there going to be in the story? Should it be 2? Should it be 3? Should it be 4? How many? That's going to be important because we're going to have to decide who the characters will be before we start the story next week. And the last question is what kind of ending? So it's going to be a sad ending, a happy ending, a funny ending, an unresolved ending, and that means an ending where at the end you still don't really know what's going to happen. Or a cliffhanger, which is kind of like an unresolved ending but with like a lot of drama, you know. So if this video cut out right now with Rosco with his mouth around my arm and you didn't know what was going to happen, that would be a cliffhanger. But you wouldn't do that, would you? Would you? You might, because I have a treat in my hand. So those are the 3 questions you're going to ask. Then the next thing after that, here you go, is after that link. So link number 1 brings you to a place where you vote. Now you have to vote today though, because I need to make the decisions on the story so we can do the next bit of planning tomorrow. So you have to vote today. The next link takes you to what I call a sign-up sheet. So that's you're going to fill in on the sheet when you're going to do your story. So you'll see the sheet, it'll say Monday, 9 o'clock, half 9, 10 o'clock, half 10, 11 o'clock. And that's just so we all pick our own time when we're going to write. And there can only be one person in each time slot. That's very important. So if you want a certain time slot but someone else has already put their name in there, you can't go putting your name in there too. So you have to pick one that nobody else has picked. And how that's going to work is that means the first person will get to write, and we will then know for certain that when the second person comes along, that bit is already done. Okay? So the two things you need to do after you watch this video are go and vote on those few story questions. And the second part is to pick a time next week when you're going to write your story. The important thing I'm going to tell you about that is this. In some houses, people get up very, very early in the morning and they start working on Seesaw at like 8:30, and they do loads of work in the morning. I know that because I can see when your posts on Seesaw come in. In other houses, I think people might be doing other things in the morning. They might be helping around the house, or they might just be staying in bed a little bit later, and then those people are posting on Seesaw later on in the day, kind of like at around 12 or around lunchtime. So if in your house you do most of your work at around 11 o'clock in the morning, is there any point you signing up for 9 o'clock in the morning? You know, be honest about it. Are you actually going to be sitting at your computer or at your tablet at that time in the morning? And if you're not, don't sign up for that morning. But if you are, that would be a good time for you to pick. So that's the one thing I want you to be very careful on, is when you're picking a time, pick a time that's a sensible time for you. And this might be a good one to actually ask your parents about. I know I said we don't want to be asking parents for too much help with remote school, but this is one where you could say to them, you know, listen, I'm thinking of picking this time. Do you think that would be a good time for me to do this? Will I be able to get on the computer? Will my brother or sister be working on it? Are you planning that we were going to go for a walk at that time? So do run it by your parents first, okay? And the most important thing, once again, is do you have to do this? No. You don't have to do this. If you discuss with your parents and they say, do you know what? That thing Niall has suggested there, it sounds a bit tricky, and I'd rather you focused on other schoolwork. That's fine. That's totally fine with me. But if you do decide to do it, and you do pick a time slot, you do kind of have to stick to it. Because like I said earlier, let's say you end up being the person who writes page 10. The person who's writing page 11 cannot write theirs if you don't write yours. So just remember that if you're deciding to do it with us, you have to do it. Okay? I know sometimes things happen. You might say you're going to do it and then maybe something happens and you have to go somewhere or the internet stops working. That's fine. That's totally different, okay? But what I mean to say is if you decide you're going to do it, try your best to do it for me. Is that okay? And I think that's going to be really exciting now on Thursday to have a look at how people manage to get one story and continue it on. So, last time I'm going to say it straight after this video. Number 1, click the first link to answer the questions. That's going to take you about 2 minutes. I'd be very surprised if it took longer than that. And number 2, have a chat with your parents about what's a good time for you to do your writing next week. And then you can pick that time. You have to have your time picked by Friday though, okay? I'll be closing that sign-in sheet on Friday. And the reason for that is because I have to have enough time then to put all the stuff on Seesaw that you're going to need for next week. So, with your voting, do it straight away. With your signing up, picking your time, try and do it straight away. If you need to have a chat with your parents and you can't do it straight away, that's okay. But you do have to do it done by Friday. Does that all make sense? Great, and I'm really excited about that one. So, for now, I'm going to say goodbye. I will actually be in touch again tomorrow to tell you a little bit more about this project. So check the announcement section on Seesaw, because that's where these sort of other videos will turn up. But until tomorrow, see you, bye bye, and well done on all the work so far.